Welcome. This is my second video installment, How to Analyze a Work of Art, with your instructor, John Wagoner. Now, here's the thing. Whenever you look at a work of art, you should really use that checklist that I've referred to, that you'll see time and time again that I'm referring to, announcements, and you'll see that checklist available in Blackboard. With that checklist, you see the formal elements in a work of art, and those are line, shape, value, light, color, texture, space, time, and motion. Overall, you hear these plastic, elements, formal elements, the visual elements. There are a million different names in the art world, but whenever you hear me referring to them, you'll hear them such as formal elements or visual elements or the checklist. Now, inside of that checklist, I have provided some other things besides just those formal elements. If you look in the top right side, right here, we see style. Again, we're going to cover all these different styles, what those are, what they mean, and how to tell the difference between them all. Then we see the principles of design, and that's really chapter 3. And you can skim over that. That's what I usually have students do, and really focus on the bulk, the formal elements in chapter 2. Then we have the subject matter. And we'll get into that later on. And again, I'm just giving you this slide just to kind of look at it overall, to see these terms and think about this. When you look at a work of art, this is your checklist. Did you talk about line? Did you talk about shape? Go through each single element, every single little topic, and go through, every single one, because these are really important to know and what you need to cover when you talk about a work of art. So, this is where I get to tell you, this is the fun part. Here's our image on the left. This is by Bronzino, Venus, Cupid, Folly and Time. It's also called The Exposure of Luxury. We also see the caption, the year, what it's made out of. So this is oil on wood. It refers to an oil painting on wood. And it gives us the size. Generally, they have a lot of different measurements, different titles, but what you see in here is what I want you to remember. So, as you look at an image, you really need to soak in that imagery and figure out what it is we're looking at. So this is where I tell you, be the detective. Whether your favorite detective is Columbo, Ice-T as Detective Finn, or Monk. I mean, really, they all come into the crime scene. They see what's going on. They analyze it. They can break it down. That's what I want you to do with this image. It's been provided to you, so we got to figure out who it is, what's going on, what is this experience that we're looking at right here, this moment in time. And it's almost like we're storytelling, but we're trying to make up a true story based off of the evidence that we see in this room. This one is a little tricky since it's still questionable. And that's the thing. This painting was created as a puzzle. So, overall, if you think about it, your speculation on this could be the true answer to this painting. Some people still don't know the true meaning behind this, or they just guesstimate. They think they have this hypothesis, but still, we don't really know. So, let's cover style. I usually start with this one because it's the easiest. You look at it, you can already tell the different types of style. So we have these options here. 1, realistic. It looks real. We also see it almost like a photograph. It looks so realistic. We could jump into that scene and exist with them. We also see another phrase called trompe-l'oeil. Again, trompe-l'oeil. It is French. It means to fool the eye. A lot of artists, they love to paint so realistic that it looks like the real thing, that they are duping us. No, it's not a real item, it is a painting or it is a photograph, and that is trompe-l'oeil. Then we see another style. It's called abstract or representational. My really good example here is my stick figure that I've created just for you guys. And look at that. What does that object represent? It represents a person. It's an abstracted person. Do we actually look like that? No. You can imagine if we did. But that is a representation or an abstracted form of a person. Our arms and legs don't look like that. Our eyes definitely don't look exactly like that. Even our heads, right? So, again, abstract and representational. It's a recognizable form of something that we see in the outside world, but it's not exactly right. Another style is expressive. You can always tell if it's an expressive artwork because of the gesture, the movement that's entailed. You always can tell if someone's drawing, in an angry mood or, an agitated mood. You can just tell. And that's kind of the same thing. Then we have non-objective. The key word here is to think about the main phrase, no and object. So no object whatsoever in that painting. And we see here in this image, this is a painting by Jackson Pollock. He's a really good example of non-objective artwork. You don't see a fuzzy kitten in there or a chicken, a rooster. You don't see Colonel Sanders and his pet pig, whatever. There are no objects there. No objects. It's basically forming the formal elements all put together, the colors, the lines, the shapes. And that's all you can really talk about. You can't talk about the figures in the painting because all we see in this particular image is paint. Then we have one other style. It is called conceptual. It is all about the idea and the concept. So many artists choose to create conceptual artworks, and a lot of people say that they are not beautiful and they are not pretty. Well, that's for the majority of conceptual artwork. The idea is more important than the representation of that artwork, the visual display. Again, the idea is more important. So, here's our image. We look at it. We figure out what type of style it is. I would call this, what would you call it? Realistic. That's right. You got it head on. If you didn't get that, we'll just progress even more and study those particular styles. So as we go through this checklist, I want you to kind of figure out what really is going on. So take some time. You can pause this video right now, kind of put your thoughts together, even jot them down, whatever, or you can just use this video as a practice to go through it. Another thing to really talk about here is that when you look at a work of art and you're analyzing it, I know you're just jotting down that information for me, but what I want you to do is talk about that artwork as if I am blind. Or, you're talking to a blind person, trying to tell them what this image looks like. And you can do this exercise with your family, friends, loved ones, and have them close their eyes and try to describe what an image looks like. And use those terms, line, shapes, and colors, all of that. And really tell them what's going on. Here I've just given you some examples of some wonderful blind people in this world. Even though some people say that they are disabled, look at what they have done. Cooking and playing the piano. I mean, that's great. So just remember, you can accent this to illustrate the visual cues for the rest of the audience. Now let's start with line. We have 4 major areas to cover here: actual lines, implied lines, contour lines, and psychological lines. Okay, notice the blue area, actual lines. These are the actual lines that we see. These are the lines that are in the actual composition. Then we see where those lines are in that image. Check it out. So we see some of these areas, where those lines are at. We can see it with the arrow that she is holding right here, in the wings, in the curtains, the hourglass, these wings here, even these straps. I mean, they're everywhere in here. The folds. I'm just giving you some examples of where those lines are, the actual lines. Now, we see some contour lines. Overall, we see the contours of the shape. Think of a silhouette or an outline. That's really what we're looking at here. We see the edges of the body, the contours, and where they're going all around with these yellow arrows. Look at the edge, the contour. We can follow them. Like this arm right here, if we follow it all the way up, it leads us to this area. And that's the thing I want you to take note of. All these different lines. Where are they pointing? Where do most of them seem to be pointing in this image? Then we see psychological lines. Again, the definition: perceived edges of things, or what I like to say, pointing fingers, looking at things, which we look at their eyes. What are they looking at? So we see like this infant right here. Where is that infant looking? Where is this old man looking? This figure's looking down. We see all these connections. The eye connection between people. Again, if someone's pointing at the ceiling, you're going to be inclined to look at that ceiling. So we're really wanting to look at this. Now, there are other things such as implied lines. There's not really many present here, But we think of the implied lines. Look at these shapes. Again, the first shape is a circle, and all these different dashed lines imply, put together, a circle. Same thing, triangle, and then that rectangle. They are implying a general shape that connect the dots, because if we connect them, we see that they basically imply a particular shape. Now, let's talk about shapes. So, if I were to ask you, looking at this image, you got a 50-50 chance if it's geometric or organic shapes. Most of you would say that they are organic shapes. And we see the human figure. We see these round curves, the curvilinear functions, yes, somewhat geometric, but the majority of them are organic shapes. So that's the main thing that everybody always forgets. When you look at a work of art, mostly composed of organic shapes. Now, value. Now, if we take a look at the idea of value, we think of it as contrast. Is there a lot of contrast here? Where is it? Be specific. You can tell me that there are some values on her body. That's where we can see like the curves here, even like this little dimple, even like the curves on the body and the form. We see those values. And again, she's really bright, so we see that as kind of high key. She stands out. She becomes a focal point. Some other ideas to think about, if you can't remember. Low key. If you ever watch the Avengers, the villain, his name is Low Key. So you can kind of remember it like that. Dark and sinister, low key. Cheesy, I know, but it's easy to remember. So light. Okay, we focus on this. Some areas, do they have some intense light aimed onto the figures? Who doesn't? Who's in darkness? Like this figure here. We don't look at this painting and say, oh, it's all about this person right here, or this dove down here at the bottom, or these masks. No, we look at the light and how it's aimed at these two individuals here. Now the colors. Now you might see this image and you'll spot out the particular colors that stand out the most. To me, and this is where I always tell students it's subjective and what draws out to you, but I see a lot of blue, the majority of blue, these primary colors. Look at the tips of the wings, this blue cloth down here, down at the bottom, but then we do see another primary color, this red. It kind of draws us out. So it's sort of balanced out with these colors. Is it a majority of warm or cool colors? Remember, that's pertaining to temperature. And then also, if it's all blue, what can that mean? Is this sadness? Maybe, perhaps. Again, up to you. If you can defend it, I'll give you those points in that essay. So texture. Here's another one. Actual texture. Whenever you look at an image, we're not seeing the actual texture. Actual texture would have the actual object in front of you. You could touch it, you could feel it, you could tell if it's soft or hard, smooth, so on. And then simulated. This is what we see in imagery, in photographs. So when we look at this image, this is not the actual texture. I can't go out there and touch that, Cupid's wing, or the pet the pigeon down at the bottom, or that dove rather. But again, it's simulated for our senses. Then later on, you're going to discover subverted texture. This is where an artist invents or abstracts or imitates a particular texture. My artwork even does this, and some of you will actually get to see this later on. I make objects out of paint. Although they look like the real object, people get duped, and they think that it's the real thing until they actually touch it, and then they realize that this is an imitation. It's actually made out of paint. And by definition, I call them paintings. But overall, these textures, that's what you want to see here. This image is trompe-l'oeil. It's realistic. It's fooling us. It looks so realistic. We're going to say that it's simulated. It's simulated for us. Now, space. Don't think of the final frontier in that, endeavor. But what I want you to think about is the image shallow. Is there a lot of space there? Is it three-dimensional, or is it a two-dimensional painting, that shows that three-dimensional space? Is it really deep? Can we see far off into the background? Like in this image, I only see these dark areas. I don't see anything past that, so it's not really too deep. And this curtain, this drape right here, just kind of shuts us off, so we don't see that far. We also look at perspective, vanishing points. Really you can look at that in your text. All these lines can converge to 1 point or 2 points, telling us more about depth. Then we see relative size or linear perspective, really telling us, who is larger than who. We can tell, the size of this female compared to this child. Who's bigger? Just because she's kind of laying down doesn't mean that she's smaller than this boy, right? Again, it's all about how we see space. One other thing I would like to mention is that you do need to remember that in the formal elements, space also refers to the third dimension. So whenever we're looking at a sculpture, that is three-dimensional. That is the space. Okay? That is a formal element. Three-dimensionality is a formal element. Time. Time is interesting because time tells us a lot. We can look at someone and see if they're wearing bell bottoms, what era they come from, or what they're influenced by. Same thing with their cars. Again, fashion's a big indicative source for that. Sometimes you go into somebody's house that's dated and you see this avocado green fridge. You can tell that's not a brand new fridge, that was from back in the day. So that time can be implied. Then we also see something called stopped time, or time of reference. And that's sort of like taking that remote and hitting pause. So when we look at this image, I can show you some stopped time. Like this infant over here. Look inside of his hands. We can see these rose petals as if he's about to throw them to celebrate the love of these two. We're just guessing here, just going along. But we see this movement. We also see that they're about to kiss. So we see that as well. That is that stopped time. We also see that this woman is kind of threatening almost with this arrow into this boy, this young boy. And we'll talk about what that means and what it represents. But it does show us a little bit of motion as well. And these are sometimes used interchangeably. Then we have motion. And this can also represent some specific items for time that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But again, we see blurred areas. We also call this dynamism. You will see this a lot. I know in your textbook they talk about dynamism of a soccer player, but I give you this image down here. Dynamism of a dog on a leash. This is a perfect idea of dynamism. If you look at the image, you see that dog moving, running. You see the leash. You see the person walking right here with their legs. And then we even see the background, this area back here, as maybe the pavement or the ground moving. It's like looking down at the roadway when you're driving down. Remember, keep your eyes on the road. But still, we see this movement. Then, if you ever look at a sculpture that's actually moving, you think of like a mobile and a baby's crib, which actually started off as an art form. We can call that kinetic or actual motion because it's actually moving for us. Then we actually see implied motion, and it implies the way that something is going to move. So again, that infant with those flowers, it's implying that he's about to throw these flowers over them, and she's about to pierce him with that arrow. Again, it is implied, this movement. So now let's get into the principles. So we're going to break some of these down. The movement, again, we've talked about that, or the directional forces. Where does everything seem to go on this image? Always talk about how you read a book, top to bottom, left to right. Well, what about in this painting? Maybe the lines and the shapes all lead us into looking at one particular thing. If you're focusing on the focal points, on the dominant areas, which would be these two because of all the movement and directional forces that it's gaining attention, you're right on the money. So let's go through some more of these. Again, focal points. Think of it as that bullseye. Whenever you look at an image, what did you look at first? What did you look at second, third, and so on? And always kind of remember how you look at that image. What drew your attention in first? Then we talk about positive and negative areas. Usually our positive areas are things that are in the foreground, things that are the closest to us. So, we could say like the dove, these figures here, this figure here. Those are the positive areas, or the areas that really get attention. Then we can talk about the background, or the areas that don't get any attention whatsoever. Like maybe you could say this blue cloth is our negative area. It's not really getting our attention, right? It's not like when you look at this painting, oh, I looked right at that blue sheet. No, you didn't. So that's our negative space. Some people can be rendered as negative space items, or just a middle ground even, where it's kind of in between. Again, that's up to you, what you think is important in that image. Again, your response is subjective, but if you can defend it, I'll give you those points. We also see that artists love to do what's called economy or repetition. You see a lot of artists do this in CGI, where you see crowds of people, whether it's zombies attacking, like in World War Z, or the T-Mobile commercial, where you see crowds of people in the background. They're actually groups that have been replicated over and over, a pattern of these like 20 individuals, and you start to see the people moving in the same way, or you start to notice one person is duplicated in all of those crowds. That is the principle of economy. They're saving up all this artistic time that they could be developing an individual crowd of people, but they repeat it. Again, this pattern. Again, it saves them time, and it adds a little bit of a aesthetic quality to the piece. Then we also see proportions. That's important. Is it proportionate? Is the head on that infant super huge and the rest of the body is super tiny? Do they have large hands compared, to the size of their body? Is it correct to scale? So always think about that as well. The title. That's the last thing that I usually look at, and it validates my claim to what I speculate. But some people like to look at the title first and then look at the artwork, which can give you a little bit more of a bias. So like if you looked at the title first, then look at the image, you would start to look for Venus, Cupid, Folly and Time. But if you looked at the image and you started saying, oh, I see Cupid, I think that's Cupid, but you have no validation until you look at the title. Sometimes artists will confuse us. They will say, Colonel Sanders, in that title. So what are you looking for? Colonel Sanders. There he is. Kind of oddly enough, looks like, that old guy up there. But here we actually see Colonel Sanders in that image. What if they put untitled and they threw in this person? Again, untitled leaves it to our interpretation. It is subjective. It is our response then. Some people can lead us on. Some people can just give us that information right on, or they can just leave us in the dark. That's how artists work. So, subject matter. Again, this is not a formal element. This is the idea behind that artwork. And this is what I want you to focus on. The interaction between the two people, or three, or four. What are these group of people doing? What is the narrative? Like, if it's like watching a show and I hit pause and I asked you, what's going on in this scene right now? Describe it to me. Try to figure out what they're doing. I can take a guess that, these two people are about to kiss, and some people are against it. Like these people, they look like, what is going on? And this kid is sort of like celebrating it, throwing the flowers. This guy, he's trying to take a peek, maybe see what's going on, who knows? We'll keep developing it even further. But we also see symbolic meanings. Symbols and objects or iconography can be tied to a particular person so that you will know who is what. And that's really important in paintings such as this, especially in the Renaissance. Then you start to see some themes. If there's a theme or a motif such as love, sadness, hatred, I'm sure you could probably figure that out from the appearance. Here we're actually seeing love. It also can be validated by Venus and Cupid being in this piece, because that's what they are associated with. And then references to history. I'm going to tell you the story that leads us up into this idea. And then also ideology. So, again, we looked at the title, and if I asked you, where's Venus, Cupid, Folly, or Time, how would you know who was who? And this is where I say to you, attributes, or iconography. What's the overall meaning to this artwork? We need to figure these things out. Originally, this painting was described as being a puzzle, but we wonder who is who and what's going on. So, this is our story. If you look at the woman in the central figure, she's kind of dead center, especially with her head, but she's holding this little golden orb. If you look closely, it's actually a golden apple. We also call it the apple of discord. You can kind of think about the story of the apple being awarded or given, and relating it to Snow White even. But here's the story. I'm basically paraphrasing it so we can get the gist of it. The golden apple of discord is awarded to the fairest of them all. Zeus actually controls this apple and who to give it to. And there are three women, these goddesses: Aphrodite, who's also known as Venus; Hera, who is Zeus's actual wife; and then there's Athena, this warrior goddess as well. But we see these three women, and they're in this competition. And if you think about it, three women, there's an apple, sort of like a beauty contest for this golden apple. And Zeus, since he basically did not want to have that, responsibility, he puts it onto a mortal. And this mortal's name is Paris. And he tells Paris, okay, you have to tell us who is the most beautiful woman, and you must give that apple to her. Basically, leaving Zeus out of it. He's not going to be in trouble, especially since his wife's in the mix, right? So Paris ends up talking to all these individuals, and with Aphrodite or Venus, she ends up promising Paris, if you give me that golden apple, I can give you the most beautiful woman, and she will actually love you back. Although she did not mention that she was already married. This is the Helen of Troy. He then agrees with that because what a perfect, deal, right? Well, as he does this, finds out, that this woman's married. They now have each other, and his husband, you can imagine during that time, is going to be pretty PO'd. So they're going to come after her, and that causes the Trojan War, or the onset, I should say. So whenever we look at that figure, we can tell who is Venus. We can see the golden apple. We know who that is. Now, if you think about it, who's also associated with Venus, or the goddess of love? Think about it. February 14th, who do you see running around with a little bow and arrow? Again, Cupid. But normally we see him as this little boy. Right here we see him because he has these wings. And we get a little idea of this strap back here, and kind of the bow, it pokes out just a little bit. Now, where's one of his arrows? Again, she's holding it. Why do you think we see that arrow, this attribute of Cupid, but it's being held by Venus? Cupid is actually Venus's son. Why are they about to fall in love? Well, look, she has that arrow. She's about to stab him with it. Then he's going to fall in love with her, basically being a slave to her and doing her bidding. Because every time around, February 14th, he's spreading love all around, right? He's doing Venus's work. So it gives us that idea, that story. Now, if you looked in the title, we've already figured out Venus and Cupid. Now we're going to find out Folly and Time. So, first off, folly is known as foolish pleasure. As we see this incestuous relationship, between the mother and the son, this kid that is Folly, he is celebrating it. Most of us are probably saying, "Ooh, that's incest, right?" Well, he's celebrating it, and that is that foolish pleasure, even though that is, wrong. He is celebrating it. Then we also see an idea of time. If I asked you to look in this image and find an object representing time, what might you say? Well, you start to scan the piece, and then you see an hourglass in the upper right here. And so we pair it with this older man, and we start to think, Father Time. So that's that representation that we've seen or heard of. Oh, Father Time. There you have it. So there are 4 characters. And again, what now do you think is this exposure of luxury? Whether it's this incestuous love or not. We also see some other characters as well. But we do want to think about this in your thoughts. How you examine this image. You can, look up the story and the history behind this painting. But that doesn't give us your thoughts. A lot of students do that in the essay. They go straight to Wikipedia, copy and paste, put it in the essay. I usually give you a 0. I really do, because you're plagiarizing that information. But what I want you to do is give me your thoughts. What do you think of when you see this piece? You, not Wikipedia, not your mom, not your sister, not your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. You, what do you think of when you see this piece? That's usually going to take a while for some people to figure out. But just come up with an answer. Think about it. And even, you can recite what the text says. Don't just copy and paste what the text says, but borrow off of it. Put it in your own words. Really put it to your own 2 cents. So to recap, always use that checklist when talking about the artwork, the line, the shapes, the styles, everything on that. Don't forget to be the detective. Don't forget to use those terms, especially from Chapter 2. Remember, be specific and describe everything in detail. Again, explain what you see in your own words, and don't just recite what you read from the text or the internet. Again, this is how we get you to think outside the box. This is how you can really examine something and analyze it.